Well, so how to build a modern organization, right? So organizations are evolving. So 1970s, there used to be an organization 1.0, which was kind of a pyramid structure. And that pyramid was full of hierarchy, gathering the power for myself, so I am the most powerful person in the company. A lot of hierarchy, a lot of resources. We don't treat them as people, we call them resources, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of standardization, and that was where we all live. And actually, there was nothing wrong on it, because it was a perfect match, simple structure, perfect match for the world, which seems to be obvious, seems to be simple, seems to have only obvious problems. That's the Kinevin framework, which you most likely know already from David Snowden, but he pretty much says the world could be classified to those 4 segments. And in the 1970s, we really believed that the world is quite simple, obvious problems, so it's enough if we take best practices. So we've got those bosses who just decide. Isn't that simple? One person to say what the others do, and they just follow the orders. And the most common management tool at that time, carrot and stick. So the employees been working only if they got something promised. If you do that, you'll get this. Or if they got something which forced them to move that direction. That was the general belief of that type of organization. And in general, those people said, well, people are not innovative, they are not smart, they are just workers. And they need me, the boss, to tell them what to do. And those bosses have been actually quite successful, so those companies have been growing. But eventually, the business changed. And it was not anymore simple as it used to be. So 20 years after, we've got most of the problems which we've been facing in our industry, software industry, IT industry, but pretty much everywhere, they've been complicated. So we find out it's not simple anymore. We can't use the simple structures. So the structure which we came up with was based on deep specialization. So we think if we invest in people, they become great experts. They be wonderful, knowledgeable experts on that one specialized area. So before, we've got one person who could do pretty much anything if he got the orders. After, in this type of organization, well, we start to create roles and specialization. So instead of having a software engineer or somebody like that, we've got a department for Java programmers, specialized department for databases experts, specialized department for testers, people who write the documentation, people who analyze things, people who take care about customer relationship, people who take care about finances, and finally, people who can take care if you need a new chair. So you are not anymore allowed to do anything else, even if you feel I could do that, because we've got a specialized people, special role. And these people are the experts. And that got certain consequences. So the company's growth, which seems to be a good thing, but then at certain point of a time, those managers been facing another problem. They said, well, it's growing, we need more and more and more people, it's going to be more and more expensive, so let's fire some people. And they've been firing and cutting costs. They're not really leading anywhere. But let's deep dive into the organization 2.0. There is a model of a tribal leadership I'm going to speak about a bit later, but the most environment and culture and belief from the most of the employees, the expert employees, and the managers in that organization was like, I am great, and you are not. You are not that great as I am, because otherwise you'll be at my position. If you even try a little bit more, you might be the same successful as I am. but you are not that good, right? So, therefore, I am a manager. Therefore, I am a senior vice president of whatever else. Therefore, I am the expert, because I am great, and you are not. And that was the common belief. And that's all about me. And that kind of environmental culture is leading to some special way of leadership, which is called leader-follower. So you might imagine it as, you have the managers, they give the orders, and then we have those followers. We didn't really change that model from the organization 1.0. It's still there, with one exception. Because of that organization doesn't have the pure hierarchy, we find out that there is no God at the top of the organization who would decide. So we try to hide, and we try to call the committees. And we try to hide before the decisions of the other people. So after all, when it turns out to be not wise, not good decision, we can point our finger and say, oh, it's his fault. He was there, he decided, not mine, not mine. So that's what started to be quite common in those organizations. And then, finally, again, the world changed. So nowadays, those problems we are facing as an industry, as people, as society, as companies, they're not simple, they are not complicated, they are complex. Why? Because we deal with a huge communication. There is a huge buzz about globalization. If some even individuals somewhere hidden in, I don't know, China, for example, do something and make it visible through the internet to the rest of the world, that person might influence everybody else's business. So those businesses are interconnected. You are not anymore alone. It's not about your decision. It's about how you are able to react to whatever is happening outside. And because that outside means the whole world, it's not really predictable. You can't really know every single company which may be created or disappear next day. So therefore, we are thinking about complexity. And there have been a lot of talks about complexity. But to address a complexity, we need something which I called Organization 3.0, mostly because I feel that the Agile organization is something which people don't really accept well, so I was looking for a new label. And I got my inspiration from Jürgen Appelo and his Management 3.0. But that's just a coincidence, pretty much. And also the shape of that organization is not anymore the pyramid, is not anymore the metric structure or the kind of square, but it's kind of a circle which can change. It's more like a network. And here we really focus on different leadership. So we need different leaders. We need companies to be accepting a different culture, to be changing the mindset. We are aiming for the partnership, for decentralization, for self-organization, allowing people to take over the ownership for their decisions, trust, transparency, all those nice words which are, yeah, we are open, we trust each other, but then you face a problem and you realize, no, there is no trust because I'm not able to speak up in front of my colleagues. So that's pretty much the Agile organization, or organization which needs to be in order to let Agile be successful. And it starts with the tribal leadership, which I already mentioned. So it has 5 stages of your internal company culture. The first one, say, life sucks, is not really common in organizations. You can find it in prisons or street gangs. Not that important for you here now. Then the second one, my life sucks, is common for the organization 1.0. Why? Because, my life sucks because I have to work for that stupid company. And my life sucks because I have an idiotic boss. And my life sucks because the coffee machine is not working, etc., etc. It's really a heavy environment where if you came to that environment, you say, like, I wouldn't like to work here. I don't even understand why the people are staying there. And from that stage, You have to move the people to the one stage next. You have to help them to go one next step to stage 3, which is, I am great already. And there is a huge difference from my life sucks to I am great, because you know, you are successful. After all, finally, you are successful as an individual. So the third level helps people to become successful. And there is a trouble with that model that you can't skip stages. So what we often do with Agile transformations, when we apply Scrum, for example, we just take environment, a company which is mostly at this stage, and we try to move them somewhere there and say, you know, you see that Scrum, isn't that great? And they say, I just don't get it, my life sucks. And again, they don't even understand what you're speaking about. So you first need to help them to become successful as individuals. So there is nothing really wrong on Organization 2.0 because it helps to create those successful individuals. And once you're done with yourself, so you achieve some success, you're happy with yourself, you feel you're self-confident, you are great, then you might be ready for the next step. And that's actually what we try to create with Organization 3.0 with Agile, is we are great. So the thing is that if you believe we instead of I, and the people will never go for we if they are not done with themselves, if they feel, well, I might not be that good, and those people, I don't really, those people, yeah, you must be self-confident enough so you can say, well, let's make something bigger. I'm ready now. So that's the fourth stage. And the fifth stage is actually, life is great. So again, unfortunately this time, it's not so common in organizations, but you can imagine an organization which doesn't have any competitors. So in we are great, it's like we as a team are great, and those other people are not that great as we are. But in the fifth stage, there are no other people. There is no we and them. It's just us in general. And for example, we fight with cancer. So we don't have a competitors. That company is developing something against cancer, we're developing something against cancer. And if we collaborate, or at least help each other, or not fight with each other, we might win. And it's very difficult to explain that fifth stage to anybody who is somewhere here, impossible even. So, but anyway, people must be done with themselves in order to move next stage. Leadership. So it starts with a question, how can we help people around us? Or how can I help people around me? Both are good. How can I help them to be more successful, better leaders, maybe? And there is actually a very interesting book, which is coming from the environment of US submarine with atomic power pump, something very, very critical stuff. And David Mark had been pretty much explaining how he changed himself as a commander of that submarine and applied a leader model instead of leader-follower. So leader-follower is clear. You give the orders. People should just do what you say. You must be the smartest one. You must be at the level 3 leadership model. I am great. Because otherwise you can't make orders. While if you are on the next stage, then you say, we are great, and if I want to create that environment, I must help the other people how to become leaders. So it's not anymore about the orders, it's about self-organization, as we say in Scrum, and Agile, but about how to create leaders around ourselves. How the people can become servant leaders, maybe. That's a new buzzword which is about it. But how can I help you to make a decision or to just do things by yourself? And now think about yourself. Think about how you treat the other people. Do you see them as roles, or do you see them as people? I'll give you an example of what I mean. So I'm traveling a lot. Across Europe, there are those small planes, so you have to travel by bus from and to the plane. The bus is pretty much empty with like 5 chairs in it, so a lot of people, the full plane can be there. Well, not that comfortable, but I guess useful. And what you do, just imagine you take off the plane, sit down because you're one of the first passengers going out, sitting in that chair, reading your emails because you are very busy, and then you see the mother and the child. And they are standing because, of course, no chairs are available anymore. So will you see them and treat them as the other passenger who happen to be not so lucky as I am? Well, you know, that happened. There are not enough chairs for all passengers. Well, they should be faster. Well, or be more lucky. Or would you treat them as a people and say, well, maybe I can stand up, maybe I can offer them because they might be tired. It's difficult to, you know, travel with small kids. If you select the first thing and say, well, other passengers, I don't really care, then you pretty much betrayed yourself. And you close yourself into some tiny box, and that tiny box is uncomfortable. So you start in your mind saying, well, she's a not good mother anyway, because it's not a good idea to travel with that small kids. You know, they should be at a forest or playground. It's her fault. And the child is enjoying standing anyway, so. But as you start to think about that, you're closing yourself in that box slower and smaller and smaller and smaller, and feel more and more uncomfortable, and you start to be more and more angry. That's a psychological process in your head. You do the same thing when you go home from work and your wife or girlfriend or husband or whoever being the whole day at home, and you see the dishes which are not cleaned. What do? You might either say, well, she or he might have a hard day, so I'll do that, or just keep it there and don't care. Or you might just say, oh, you've been the whole day at home and you didn't clean your dishes. You are a poor person. So that's pretty much what is the difference between treating people as roles and personalities. And of course, that applies to your organizations a lot. So, you know, the developer, right? He's responsible for testing his own code. And now, he's not a good developer indeed because he didn't test enough and now it's not working. It's his fault, he's really a bad person. Well, maybe not. Maybe just, you know, everybody makes some mistakes, so let's discuss how we can change it next time. See him as a people instead of role. It's difficult. You can't do it 100%. But you can definitely improve. Christopher Avery. He is one of my favorite speakers, researchers about responsibility, because he makes really responsibility tangible. Because from the organization 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, everybody is asking, okay, who is responsible? Tell me who is responsible. Oh, those people can't be responsible, and there is lack of responsibility. Everybody's talking about it, but no one really understands it. So he created a responsible process, so he pretty much says that responsibility has several steps, which your brain will automatically offer you when the problem occurs. So to give you an example what it really means, well, let's imagine I have my car and I'm going to the shopping mall, and below the shopping mall there is a garage with a very narrow spaces as we usually have in Europe. And once I park, because of that narrow space, I just crashed into the car next to me. So the first responsibility, as Christopher Avery says, is denial. Well, I don't think it happened. It was just some sand or no, there is a dirt on his car and no, it's been broken already before. Don't see it. If you're not happy with that, he said, in tenths of a second, your brain offers a next stage. Automatically, it's based on the evolution things. You say, well, it's his fault. Because, you see, he's not staying exactly at the middle. He's staying a little bit like that. Well, if he parked his car correctly, it would never happen. Not my fault. I'm not responsible, pretty much. Then, if you're still not happy, you might say, well, you know, that happened. Well, that's normal, right? It never happened to you? I don't believe in it. It's normal. Those spaces are small, you know, and there is not enough light. It happened. The same thing. Every software has some bugs, right? That's normal. We are not going to do anything about it. So normalize it. If it doesn't work, take it to yourself. Say, it's my fault. I will never be a good driver. I will never make it. Well, I am, well, not a good person, I guess. Well, that's not really a good thing to do, so. Next stage, you can say, well, you know, I pay insurance, so that's good, right? I give him my contact, and he may contact me, and the insurance company will solve it, not a problem for me. Therefore, I have insurance. And finally, of course, you can quit and say, I don't want to take over the responsibility because it's not important. But if you decide to take over the responsibility, really, then the only responsibility starts with what I'm going to do in order to fix it, in order it will never, ever happen again, which means it can start with anything. I'll use the public transport instead, or I park outside, or I will always search for bigger spaces, even if they are far away from the entrance, or I pay some school of driving to do the practice, anything. But it's starting with you. And the same thing if you are on a stage of leadership 4, it starts with us, what we as a team are going to do about it. It's never pointing fingers, never really solved anything. And most of the organizations, what they do, and the things start to be difficult, especially at the top level of the top management, they say, well, you know, we have that huge land of that big organization, we understand each other, so let's split it. So you are now responsible for finances, you are now responsible for software development, you are now responsible for operations, and all 3 of you, you can make your own decisions. So it's your land, do whatever you want there. There is my land, I do whatever I want there. So one of those people will, you know, start to do the flowers, and another one will grow some vegetable there, and the next one will just, you know, put there a tree. It's the apples. All good intentions. But then eventually you find out that this tree got bigger and bigger and put some shadow on those flowers and vegetable, so they are not growing anymore. And you have a conflict, and you don't even know why, because it used to be working, we used to understand each other, but we don't, because we split responsibility instead of putting an effort into how to agree and understand each other. So that's about responsibility, what we can do. And this is a very interesting concept. Not every organization is healthy. And some organizations can be pretty toxic. You can imagine it the same way, you know, yesterday party, you might drink as much vodka and cognac and wine as you wish. If you do that, you most likely would have a headache today and even feel very sick. So at certain, above certain level, it's very dangerous. It's paralyzing the organization. If you have a little of those, well, of course you can survive. So we are not looking for ideal stage. We are just looking for environment which is still healthy. And those 4 toxins, the first one, the most common, which is usually at the very beginning, it's a blaming. That's this gesture. It's your fault. Once you hear it, the typical response would be, oh, no, I can't really knew that, you know. I read the acceptance criteria, and it was not there, so yeah, you say, it's my fault, it's not working, but it's not really my fault. Well, by the way, it's a product owner's fault. Another blaming. And it's kind of a spiral, which when you start it, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the frustration is growing. The third toxin, which is quite common in the organizations, is called stonewalling. So, as an example, imagine you are with your team at the planning estimation meeting. So you do the planning poker, and one of your colleagues is saying, well, you know, it's 5. I don't really care what you are saying. For me, it's 5. and he's repeating whatever he said before, or she said before, without even listening. So the gesture is like, I don't listen, I don't really care what you think about, because maybe I am the expert, I am great and you're not, or whatever. So there's a stonewalling, and the last one is contempt. So it's an irony, sarcasm, those things, those tiny comments which could be funny at the very beginning. So if you have a healthy environment, you can say pretty much anything, because the people will laugh or just say, well, you're really serious? Ah, no, sorry, I'm not. And it's okay. But once the environment became really toxic, then that tiny comments like, with a bit of sarcasm and irony, so now you do it right, well, you take it as an attack. And again, you reply with another sarcasm, or defensiveness, or blame, or just stonewalling, or whatever else. So the thing is that in your organization, if you want to really make it healthy, you should respect different opinions and build trust and search for those toxins. Once you identify them and get used to them, then you can start using them less and less and less and less. And until there is some level of error, they're not harmful. Like the 1 glass of wine, most of the people can drink 1 glass of wine and nothing really bad happen to them or to the others. But if you drink, 2 bottles, most of the people are not capable of drinking 2 bottles. So that's the same level of toxicity in the environment. Make it very healthy. Then finally, positivity. John Gottman is a psychologist, and he spent his quite extensive research on doing research on couples. And he finally found out that he can predict with quite a high success rate if the couple is going to divorce or not. So he's been having a conversation with those couples, and just because of a ratio of a positive event versus a negative ones, he can say if they're going to stay together forever or not. And he's been really very much successful with that assumption. So he said that for every 1 negative event, you must have 5 positive ones. And that's a healthy environment, that's a good team, or of course, good couple or good company. So what we try to do in our organization, we want to increase the positivity, because the positivity works as a bank account. So you can imagine it as same thing like you have money in your bank. If you have a cash flow around 0, then if anything happens, it could be you got a fine because you've been speeding. Or your mother is ill and you have to pay some medications, or anything. You're in serious troubles because you can't pay for your rent, you can't pay for your food, you can't pay your bills, and you're in troubles. So it brings huge stress. But if you have certain level of your bank account, of a cash at your account, well, if something happens, well, most of the problems like getting a fine for speeding, well, it's bad. I don't want to throw money away just because of that. I'm not happy about that, but, well, after all, I can handle it. It doesn't really bring me serious troubles. And that's the same thing. If you have a team, and in a team you have a conflict, if your positivity account in general as a team or organization is very low, the people are frustrated, demotivated, and don't want to do anything, then every tiny thing makes a huge storm. On the other hand, if you have a high positivity and people are happy and say, really? You don't have a good day today, right? You're really serious? Or, well, okay, that was not a good thing, so let's sit down and discuss what shall we do next. So that's a difference between the traditional organizations, 2.0, 1.0, which are pretty much in the tribal leadership, my life sucks, or you are not good, because I am great, then those have, in general, usually lower positivity. While the other ones where we say, we are great, already that philosophy makes you more positive than anything else, so you happen to be a bit more successful. How we can gain positivity? Well, talk about good things, make a positivity wall, go for beer, or just have fun, celebrate. It can be tiny things. But as a leader in your organization, you should make it visible, built on top of it. And think about that ratio, 5:1. And of course, if you have more, it's even more healthier. Then you can survive pretty much anything. Change. Change is everywhere now. So John Kotter spent his life in describing a change and how you should do it. This book is a great thing to start with the 8 steps of successful change, starting with create an urgency, then get the first followers, and at the end, make it stick so it will never ever happen back again. But there is something more interesting from my perspective, and it's coming to the realization how do change really behave? What is the behavioral perspective of a change? How do people react if they are facing a change? And you can imagine a change as a edge. There is a primary side, that's a place where I'm pretty comfortable. That's the way how I do things. That's the way how we do testing. That's the way how we do coding. That's the way how we collaborate. Or that's just the way how we serve our dinner. It could be anything. Some changes are huge, some changes are tiny. So if the change is, well, from waterfall or traditional environment into the agile, then the change is huge. So, and it consists from several tiny edges in the meantime. And your role as a leader is to help people to cross those edges. And of course, for every individual, because every person is different, that step might be kind of okay still for one person, but for the other one, no way, I can't even imagine being there. It's so uncomfort zone. I don't want to be there. So you start step by step, going closer and trying how is it here, etc., until you become more and more comfortable. So you are ready to go for a visit, return back, ready to go there and stay longer, maybe return back under the pressure, and finally you're at the secondary space, which says, well, that's the way how we do it now. So finally, once you overcome the change, that secondary becomes a primary, and you're facing another change. And your role as a leader is to help people to cross those edges and to move from one side to the other one and kind of respect and appreciate that it might be hard. And for some people, it's a huge discomfort. So if you hear back the resistance or frustration, well, it's a nice signal. It's good to know because what the person is telling you, it's too much for me, I can't do that. So try to find out something acceptable. Try to challenge the people, but don't push them too much and too strong, because if you do that, they would most likely reject it. And then every next step would be much more difficult. So that's actually what's happening in the organizations. If you start with Agile and Scrum, but you don't have an environment which is ready. If you have the My Life Sucks environment as in most of your organizations, you most likely are not ready. You must first help those people to become successful and then help them to accept that change and help them to grow. It's a gradual process. Niels Flying finished his book, Organized from Complexity, recently, and one of his findings, or what he says, how the organization should look like in the modern complex world, is decentralization. So he said, well, in organization 1.0 and 2.0, we've got those bosses. or managers, or committees. It was still being centralized somehow. There had been someone else who decide and someone else who do that. But the decentralization and the modern organizations are built in communities, networks, virtual teams. You can imagine it as a flotilla of small boats. They are going to the same direction, all those boats by themselves, with the autonomy every boat has. As the opposite of the huge tanker, which we used to build with organization 1.0, 2.0, we try to build a tanker and try to make it flexible, change reactive, etc. But that's not possible because that boat, if it starts to go that direction, it takes a long time until it stops and change the direction. On the other hand, if you have a flotilla of small boats and they understand the context, so they are running the same game, that's much better because those tiny boats react on whatever is happening right there. They don't have any central control. It would be saying, well, you know, there should be windy, so do this, this, and that. Well, maybe it's not windy. It should be windy, but it's not. We are here, so we make our own decision in order to succeed. And in our Agile organization, what we do, we often do diverse and merge practices, which means whenever we start with something like, for example, a planning session, we might start together, then distribute into the small groups, create certain plan, and then come together again and merge it and discuss if it still fits together. So it's not about complete autonomy, it's about more like autonomy within certain boundaries. And those boundaries for the organization can be pretty small. If that one boat out of that flotilla would just decide, I go this direction instead of that direction, well, they may crash. Or they may never make it. So they are not free. There is not anarchism, but still decentralization is quite flexible. It allows you to react on changes. And then last thing is from this group is a system. So try to look at your organization from a system point of view. What does that mean? Imagine you are 5 kilometers above your organization, watching from a top down. From that perspective, you can't really see those tiny problems which the people have. But you see how the overall system behaves. And you're searching for patterns, and you're searching for voices of that system. And the voice of that system might be one frustrated individual who's saying, I don't know what to do, help me, or anything. While, you know, from traditional perspective, you might say, oh, that person is demotivated. We should fire him. That's the most common reply which I get in the companies. And what they say, well, maybe not. If you look at it from the system, then you take it only, well, that system is trying to tell us something. The system is trying to tell us there is something wrong here, help us, we don't know what to do. So if you look at it from the system perspective, you truly believe that everyone is right, but only partially. That's something which all the coaches should believe, and that's the approach, like we as Agile coaches are approaching the organization, because we don't really know those details. So the only thing we can do is look at it from the system perspective, from a very top, and search for those voices and see the problems. If there is a huge problem, I'm pretty sure that all of that group would be complaining and saying, I'm not comfortable, do something. So that's a system point of view. And at last, I finished a book, which is called The Great Scrum Master. It should be published in about 2 weeks. We are late in our plan. It's supposed to be online at this conference, but it's not. Technical difficulty is something. But it's a book which is dedicated not only to Scrum Masters, but all the leaders in the organizations who want to create such organization 3.0. So I tried to put in that book everything I knew about the environment and how you should build that environment. So there are things which I introduced in these talks, there are some other things, but I truly believe that the Scrum Masters are leaders and they should help the organization change. They are not the assistants, just for the record of this. So it's for any leader in the organization who want to change it, for any Scrum Masters. So, and the motto is that you're never really done. Because whenever you achieve whatever your goal is, you have a complete brand new world and you may need to improve again. And then again and again and again, so we are never done with that improving of our organization. So as a summary, Organization 3.0 is collaborative, creative, and adaptive network. So you can imagine it as that ball where you have those centers, those dots, autonomous centers which have certain autonomy, certain responsibility, but they are not living in the vacuum. They are living in a close connection with the other centers. There's those wires which are coming from them, so they have to react on each other. They have to be adaptive and changing. And if you want to build such an organization, you should help all people in your organization to become leaders. And to apply those tribal leadership model, stage 4, stage 5, and to apply that leadership model leader instead of leader follower. And again, it's about decentralization, building a network, communities, and about positivity, because if you want, you will make it. In any organization ever, you will make it. The only thing is in your head. The only problem might be in your head. If you truly believe and truly want, you will find it out. So, thank you very much. If you have any questions.